All right, guys, we have got another season preview here, this time for the New England Patriots. Last year's runners up as they dropped in the Super Bowl. We're going to do our usual stuff, go through the roster, go through the team, and we'll start with what happened last year. And again, pretty eventful. They go from 4-13 to 13-4, one of the biggest turnarounds ever in a single year. And get themselves all the way to the Super Bowl. They do drop in that Super Bowl. We'll talk about some caveats of their season going forward, but again, not much more you could really ask for after going 4-13 the year before. Last year, this was probably the best offense in the league in a variety of different aspects. Number one in EPA, number one in pass offense. Defense was borderline top 10 in EPA as well. And again, caveats with schedule and stuff like that. And I imagine Patriots fans don't like hearing that stuff because all in all, it's about who you beat in front of you and stuff like that. And I got no problem with that. I don't think Patriots fans should should be apologizing for their schedule. But in terms of what we do here in particular, in terms of analyzing teams, in terms of going through, what we expect out of future performance and things like that, we have to look at those things. And again, it was a pretty significant caveat for the Patriots last year. This was the easiest schedule in terms of opponent win percentage since 2000 at minimum. So again, it's not their fault, and it's not something Patriots fans should be apologizing for. But in terms of a lot of these numbers, we have to look at that stuff. I will say that the Patriots beat the life out of pretty much everybody they came up against that was not good. And again, you could get a lot of teams going up against that schedule last year who are not going to put up the performances the Patriots did, regardless of how good the schedule was. Again, last year for me, they finished as, I believe, third. Yeah, right around my sixth rated team. And again, it's not their fault. So we have to go past that. Everybody else has to get over it. But again, a lot of things went their way, and you need things to go your way to get to the Super Bowl, and they did. And unfortunately, you couldn't get over the line against a really good Seahawks team, but it is what it is. But again, a lot of really good things last year. Drake May had a gigantic year. We'll talk about him in a moment. The defense was solid. The offense was really good. So there's really nice things to build on. There are things that have issues. Again, the offensive line, particularly in the playoffs, had issues. We'll talk about that. Drake May had some issues in the playoffs. And again, they went up against some tougher defenses in the playoffs. Again, Denver, Seattle, Houston are all really great, fantastic defense, but there were struggles for sure. And we'll talk about all that stuff. So we'll see what it looks like coming into the new year. But a great year last year. And I think if you look at it in a vacuum, you're like, hey, Super Bowl losses suck. But in a vacuum, this team went from 4-13 to 14-3 and got to a Super Bowl, all in its second year of building. So that's a pretty good run, a really good run, to be perfectly honest. So pretty good stuff there. Last year's EPA ranks 25th in rushing offense, first in passing offense with a pretty significant bullet. Total offense was first in EPA. Pass defense was 8th. Rush defense was 17th. Total defensive EPA was 11th. So again, borderline top 10 defense. In terms of EPA, top offense. And perhaps they got better. We can take a look at some of the guys out the door. There are a couple significant guys here. Stephon Diggs out the door. Clavon Chason, who I'm not really a fan of, out the door. Tonga out the door, which I think could be a sneaky problematic loss. Jordan Hawkins as well, someone I think could be a sneaky problematic loss. Garrett Bradbury wasn't playing particularly well out the door. Alex Austin, Marte Mapu, Anthony Jennings I think is a decent loss there. Austin Hooper out the door. So there are some losses going out the door, and they'll hope to, kind of backfill and get better. I think on the offense they did that. I'm not particularly sure if they did on the defense. Romeo Dubs comes in, who I like. AJ Brown comes in, which is a pretty good get. That's in terms of replacing Stephon Diggs. I think they did a pretty decent job there. Elijah Vera Tucker comes in, who we'll talk about in a bit. Draymond Jones, Kevin Byard, Julian Hill at tight end, Reggie Gilliam at fullback, and we spoke the other day about how there aren't too many teams who are looking at or who rock fullbacks for the most part. But again, we're moving into that realm of football where beating the cover two is all about what you can do on the ground. So we're seeing a little bit more in terms of the fullback coming into it. In the draft, first round, Caleb Lomu at tackle, Gabe Yakis at defensive end, Eli Raridan tight end, Karan Prunty corner, Demetrius Crownover tackle, Baron Morton at quarterback, Jam Miller running back, Quintavious Hitchens at defensive end. So hoping to backfill some of those depth spots perhaps, as none of these guys are probably going to start for the most part. And, hopefully to work back into the team, which you don't necessarily love, but in the future could work out there. So why don't we go ahead and go through the roster. We'll do our usual start at quarterback. And again, Drake May, who was really excellent last year. Incredible second season for him. 4,394 pass yards, incredibly efficient, 72% completion percentage, 31 TDs to 8 interceptions, 113.5 passer rating. Just really, really fantastic. And in my opinion, should have been the MVP. I think he was more important and played a little bit better than Stafford did, but in the end, he had a great year, which is all we're looking at really. 4th in pass yards, 3rd in pass TDs, 3rd best ADOT, which means he was throwing it down the field really well. 9th in big time throws, 30th in scramble attempts, but 3rd in scramble yards, which means when he does get out of the pocket, he moves really, really well. Finished first pretty significantly in EPA per dropback and first in completion percentage over expectation. So yeah, all around a really, really fantastic second season. He is my 6th ranked quarterback right now, firmly in the top 10, and overall just was really, really good in that regular season last year. In terms of where the schedule comes into play, against teams, particularly in the playoffs there, he didn't play particularly well, and there's a variety of different factors that go into that stuff, but he didn't play particularly well to go, in general there. 207 yards per game, 58.3 completion percentage, 6 touchdowns to 4 picks. Also took 5.25 sacks per game in the playoffs, which again, I know the offensive line was kind of messy in that playoff run. A lot of those are on him. And again, 5.25 sacks is not offensive line play for the most part. It's, some pocket presence stuff from Drake May, who still has work to do there, and some other things. So while there were issues with the offensive line, a lot of that sack stuff is on Drake May, and it's something he's going to need to get better at again as the years go by. But again, a really, really great floor to work with. And again, the issues were there, and it's tough to kind of like separate the two, because again, the regular season was so fantastic, and the playoffs it's a 4-game sample against some really good defenses. But again, he didn't play particularly well, and the sack stuff's a problem. There were some throws in the playoffs that were like, what on earth are you doing? He had that really quote unquote famous one in the Super Bowl where Chris Collinsworth was like, I got nothing. I don't know what that was, where that was like 15 yards off in the 4th quarter of a game that was only really 12 points and they were driving. So there are issues for Drake to fix. The under pressure stuff, the sack stuff, mainly. But I have no doubt that he is a really good quarterback. I have no doubt that he's going to continue to be a good quarterback. And because of the schedule, we may end up having one of those years where it's like he just doesn't look as good. and that doesn't matter because, again, just schedule wise, he probably takes a step back in some of these numbers. Um, but a down year from May would not be a concern unless he was truly, truly, really bad. So I have no doubt that he's going to end up being a good quarterback. I don't think what happened last year was only schedule driven. I think he'll be very, very much fine as the seasons go on. Let's talk about the rest of the room. Baron Morton again comes in at a tech, I believe. Rookie, probably not going to play. Tommy DeVito's the backup. Not in love with this backup situation, and I'm not exactly sure what this team would look like with how many games like Tommy DeVito can like realistically hang on to. But it's a backup quarterback, and if Drake May goes down for a significant length of time, then it probably doesn't matter who's the back. Excuse me, Jesus. Doesn't matter who's the backup. It's probably just not going to be their season anyway. So don't love the backup room there, but we'll deal with it. On to the wide receiver room. This is upgraded quite a bit. Again, Stephon Diggs drops last year, and they bring in A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs. I really like Romeo Doubs. I think he's a really solid 2. I think he can do a lot of things that Diggs can do. And you have a player on the other side as well. So you're really deep all of a sudden, and bringing in a player who's better than Stephon Diggs and A.J. Brown, and then bringing in Doubs, who's a really, a step up at the 2 spot as well, is a pretty significant step for the wide receiver room. Again, Doubs I really like. A.J. Brown is one of the best receivers in the league. There were some kind of give-uppy moments last year, and we'll see. He is a bit diva-ish when things don't get his way, and he kind of gets, he went through that depressive episode before, and from athletes that I know have depression and have gone through depression, that stuff does pop here and there. And when he's going through downturns as a player or as a teammate or whatever it may be, and he's unhappy with the way things are going on the field, that there does seem to be a dip there in his performances and his effort. I don't think that's going to be a problem this year, and I think it's just something that they were all kind of dealing with in Philadelphia last year. So we'll see, because there were some of those plays, very similar to DJ Moore last year in Chicago, where some of those plays, and you're like, what's the effort there? I think he'll be perfectly fine here. I don't expect that to be a huge issue. There are mouths to feed here in terms of receivers, tight ends, all that fun stuff, but I think he'll be fine. And if he's fine, you're getting a top end wide receiver here. Demario Douglas looks like he's going to play out of the slot. Solid. Kayshon Boutte was pretty solid last year. A little bit overrated because I think he was just getting the 2 stuff and, getting work there. But my inkling is that he gets moved at some stage, but if he doesn't, then you have a really good 4th. So that's a pretty decent spot to be in. Mac Hollins is here, who's okay here and there for a catch or 2. Good run blocker. Weird fella, but, the rest works. Kyle Williams is okay. Efton Chisholm's. It's a deep room with good players around. Again, Mac can be a pretty decent 4. Kyle Williams can be a pretty decent backup slot. And again, A.J. Brown, Romeo Doubs. Depending on what happens with Boutte, that's a really good option to have as well. So this is a good room, a really deep room, one of the better wide receiver rooms in the league. Running back is a little bit of a different story. Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson are probably just going to split carries. They're 2 very, very different running backs, and they're probably both a little bit below average. Ramondre is solid, can get you 3 or 4 here and there, but you're probably not getting too much explosiveness out of him. And Travion is very similar to like a dumbed down version of Kenneth Walker, who a lot of the time, a lot of the jumping around and stuff doesn't get you very far, but there's an explosiveness there. And when he gets space, he's kind of gone. So in terms of finding the right mixture of these two, I'm not particularly sure. Again, I'm not in love with this room. They're both running backs, like, to me, that are around the 30 mark. Like, I could find a decent chunk of running backs better than both, but it's a decent ish 1-2, and it's a workable 1-2. It's just an interesting um, dynamic in terms of finding where the snaps should be going and in what situations they should be going in. So, interesting room. I expect this to be like a 50-50 room. You're going to get some Travion Henderson, what are you doing runs where, he's running into blocks and tackles, and then you're going to get some runs where, he breaks outside and he's gone, and then Ramondre Stevenson's going to, break a tackle and get into space and get caught from behind, and you're going to get some of that frustration stuff with this running back room, but it's workable, solid enough. I'd hope that somewhere along the line they probably upgrade this room relatively soon. But again, solid enough for what we have going on here. Land Larison, Terrell Jennings, some deeper backup stuff. Jam Miller, they drafted, I think, in the 6th round, who maybe we'll see. So it's a lower end room, but serviceable for what we got going on here. Tight end, Hunter Henry. Again, just a good solid guy to have. Has been a good solid guy most of his career. Continues to be a good solid guy. This is probably my 16th or 17th tight end. Solid, continues to be. They lose Hooper, bring on in the draft Eli Raritan, who I've only heard good things about, so we'll see what that looks like coming into the year. Some of these tight end prospects are getting so much better now, so we'll see what it looks like. CJ Dupree, Tanner Arkin, guys who are just further down the line. Hopefully you can get some good blocking out of them and stuff, but a solid room, should be a solid room, and if Raritan hits the ground running, you're probably going to see some more 12 and 13, and he might get a decent amount of playing time, assuming Hunter Henry's healthy for the most part. You're going to get some 2 tight end stuff. Again, the NFL is moving toward 12-13 packages, running the football, staying under the cover 2, and when you make a mistake and play cover 1, then we kind of go deep and do that stuff. So we're going to get a lot more 12-13 just from the rest of the NFL in general. You're seeing it from a lot of the good play callers, Rams, Niners, teams like that. So that's the kind of way we're moving, and that requires a couple of good tight ends and not just one really good one and one crappy one. So it requires depth at this position. Again, it's a requirement now pretty much along the NFL. Offensive line. This is a very interesting group. Right now, I have it as about an average group, around my 17th offensive line. This is also an offensive line that has a variety of different outcomes. I could see this offensive line moving upwards. I could see this offensive line going downwards as well. There's a variety of different different ways this ends. So we'll see what it looks like. Hopefully it goes the right way. And again, it's a solid line. Got exposed a little bit last year in the playoffs, particularly when you're playing some of those elite fronts. And again, the Patriots played some really difficult defenses along the way. Seahawks, great front. Broncos, elite front. Texans, probably the best front in the league. And they struggled. And we can start with Will Campbell. He's really, really struggled down the line. But he was really... he was pretty good for the first 14 weeks until his injury. And then he came back, and over the last 5 or 6 weeks was a bit of an issue, or a lot of an issue. He played really poorly. My impression of Will Campbell is that he just wasn't healthy. And a lot of the stuff going around, again, the tape wasn't good and none of it was good. I don't think it was something that was like, hey, this is just who Will's going to be. Now, I will say, again, he was okay last year, solid for the first 14-ish weeks. When he was going up against really good defensive ends. It wasn't like playing like at an elite level or nothing. So there were, signs there, and it might just be playing some fantastic players um, in the postseason. That may very well be the case. But there was a pretty significant drop off when it came to the last 5 or 6 weeks. In my opinion, was that he wasn't moving as well, and I don't think he was particularly healthy. Excuse me. And that's just kind of where I'm going. That's just how I feel about Will. I think his first 14 weeks are more indicative of who he is than his last 5 to 6. And there's a world where if he comes out solid, and we'll talk about the schedule in a bit, but like they play Seattle and Pitt first 2 weeks. If he's playing well, then you can probably just throw the last 5, 6 weeks out last year, just straight up. Like, then he was just hurt and just not healthy. And again, that's kind of where I'm heading with him. Excuse me, had to get that out. But yeah, good young tackle, plenty of room to grow. I expect him to grow into a pretty decent tackle. But we'll see. The first couple of weeks are going to be pretty indicative of what he's probably going to be in the year coming. Next to him, they bring in Elijah Vera Tucker. Elijah Vera Tucker's a good player, solid guard. He is never healthy, and throwing a lot of money at a guy like that is a bit of a risk. And again, if he's healthy, then you're getting a pretty good guard. Again, really good player since he came into the league. But these injuries are like really starting to stack up. Missed all of last season. Played 15 games in 2024. In 2023, he had a season-ending injury in week 5. In 2022, he had a season-ending injury in week 7. So his injury history is very real. He has missed a boatload of games since he came into the NFL. So we'll see. It's there's also an Achilles tear in there, which was one. It's serious. It's genuine. So we'll see what that looks like. Again, when he's healthy, he's a top 15 kind of guy. We'll see what, like, again, he hasn't played in a long time. We'll see if he kind of just gets back clicking into that spot, or the injuries are kind of just there and slowing him down a little bit, but we'll see. But a good player when he's healthy. We'll see how healthy he is. Jared Wilson moves inside to center. It's not a new position for him. I know he played guard last year, but he played a lot of center in college, so this is more natural to him, would be my guess. Hopefully he takes a pretty big jump this year. Didn't play super well last year. Again, a little bit out of position there. But a lot of the draft people I follow and pay attention to really like his upside, so hopefully that moves in the right direction as well. Right guard, Mike Onwenu, solid. He's had a good career so far. Is like a top 15 kind of guy. And you're going to get really good guard play out of Onwenu, and we know what we're getting. The floor is high. The ceiling's right around that. You're just getting really good, solid play out of him, and I expect that to continue into the new year. Right tackle is a little bit funky. Morgan Moses was pretty good last year. But you can kind of see the athleticism going, and there were some spurts last year that were like, it's kind of coming to an end. He's another year older now. But the depth here could be useful. Again, Caleb Lomu, they drafted in the first round there, and a lot of people thought that was a bit of a reach, but there weren't really many tackles going after him, so sometimes you got to reach in those spots. But a top 50 kind of rookie at least, and he gets to learn and play behind Morgan Moses for a little bit. And if Morgan Moses kind of falls apart, then you got a good young guy who can come in and hopefully play some snaps. So the depth there at least is solid in terms of what's going on with, the right side of the line, the right tackle. So if the first guy doesn't work out, hopefully the second guy will, and you're probably looking at, a decent 1-2 there. So we'll see. But depth everywhere else outside of, Lomu, Ben Brown is solid. Decent, can come in and play guard, hopefully, for Vera Tucker. He's not going to be as good as Vera Tucker, obviously, but it's okay depth there. Everyone else is, not super great. So we're not hoping for too many injuries in other spots. Hudson, Bryant, tackle is not great. So in terms of up and down with this team, we can get a step from, Will Campbell. We can get a step from Wilson in the middle. We're looking, and Vera Tucker stays healthy, then you're looking at a pretty good line that takes a step in the right direction, assuming Moses stays good. Like if Moses continues playing well, or Lomu comes in and plays at that level, or Wilson goes up, Will Campbell goes up, Tucker stays healthy, then you're looking at an offensive line that can be pushing top 10 pretty comfortably. You could also have a year where Lomu's not ready and Moses is starting to fall apart, and Will Campbell, just last year's playoffs were just who he was all of a sudden, and Wilson doesn't take a step, and Tucker's hurt. Like, you can see this one fall apart a little bit. So there are ups and downs here. It's probably a lot going to depend on health and what Will Campbell turns out to be. But there are spots here where there's some up and down. There's potential to go up. There's a decent amount. There's potential to go down a decent amount. So we're interested in what that offensive line looks like. And in terms of the offense, I expect this to be pretty good. Again, I expect Drake May to kind of continue being a good player. And again, the schedule's a little bit more difficult this year, and they'll be tested a little bit more, but I expect him to continue to be a good player. I expect the wide receiver room to be good. And again, I think Booty might be moved, but if he isn't, then you're looking at a really good deep room. Running back should be solid enough. Offensive line, potential to go up. So there's potential here to have like a top 10 line and a top like 3 or 4 or 5 wide receiver room and a top 5 quarterback. There's all potential for another fantastic year offensively. So I think this team's going to be pretty good on offense, unless the offensive line just completely falls apart. Defense is interesting. Last year, 11th in EPA, this unit had a good playoffs. And there are some good pieces here for the most part. Milton Williams, I like. Missed some time, but when he was available in the playoffs, that interior played really, really well. Christian Gonzalez is obviously one of the better corners in the league. So there are some nice pieces here. I'm just not personally in love with some of the moves they made. So let's go down to the defensive line, and we'll start here on the interior. Again, Milton Williams I really like, and when he came back from injury for the playoffs, that was huge. Decent pass rusher, along with a good run stop guy. He's a good defensive tackle. Really like him. Barmore was solid in spurts and like struggled in spurts. There were some good moments out of him and some bad moments out of him. And you can give him some leeway because, again, he's just coming off a year of missed football. So, that's bound to happen in spurts. But we'd like him to take a pretty decent step next year, hopefully. And again, this is where I think Tonga could be a bit of an issue. He didn't play too much, 350-ish snaps, but they were solid snaps and kind of gave room for some of these other guys. Again, Milton Williams missed time, Barmore in and out, and they didn't really replace Tonga. It's like Corey Durden was pretty solid last year, but he's probably just going to be the guy there in that Tonga spot. So Barmore needs to be more consistent going into this year, and hopefully Williams can stay healthy. Hopefully they can both stay healthy, obviously. But without Tonga, I think that the depth here could be a little bit funky. And again, if Barmore doesn't take a step, then we're probably looking at a negative player there on that side. So gave him a bit of leeway last year. Again, first year coming back from a pretty significant injury scare. But this needs to take a step this year. And again, Milton Williams is really, really solid. Depth on the other, depth otherwise, not great. Farmer, Gregory, Taylor, Farms. Need Milton to stay healthy on this unit. Edge is probably the weakness here on this football team just as a whole. Draymond Jones comes in. He was PFF's 64 best edge rusher last year. PFF does pretty good rush grades. And he's kind of been that guy for like 4 or 5 years now. So nothing that good, just in general. Um, Harold Landry on the other side, he started well last year and then really fell off like pretty significantly after week 8. Um, Run defense was pretty solid. The pass rush stuff is a worry. From week 9 on, he was 87th out of 109 edges in true pass set win rate, and 106 out of 116 in PFS pass rush grade. So again, that was from week 9 on. So hopefully he can kind of get back to form early on, and like he was early on in the year. But if he's going to be playing like that, and Gabe Yakis is not going to, as a second round pick, not going to step in and like be that guy right away, we could be looking at a pretty bad edge room here. So he needs to make that step up, or he needs to be more consistent like he was at the beginning of the season. And it might not be a huge issue because of the secondary. The secondary is really, really good, which we'll talk about. But also, if you're not getting pass rush, the secondary can't cover forever. So, like, it doesn't matter how good the secondary is, which we'll talk about in a minute. If this group isn't getting pressure, it doesn't matter. You're just nullifying really the whole thing, and they're going to have to figure it out. Again, depth pretty much dependent on the second round pick, Gabe Yakis. I hope we can hit the ground running. The rest of the group, in terms of depth, not ideal. Quintavious Hutchins, a deeper round draft pick. Elijah Ponder was bad in his snaps last year. There's very, very little to this group beyond the front, and the front isn't good. So this unit could be a pretty significant worry. Linebacker, this is a solid group. Right about above average, solid. Not much more you can ask for, really. Robert Spillane, good player. Run stuff is fantastic out of him. He's not the most athletic dude, so some of the, he does miss some tackles here in the coverage. He gets beat on sometimes, but a really solid player. Christian Ellis, another one who's solid. This is 2-3 good years in a row here. And again, nothing spectacular, and you're not going to get anything super spectacular out of this group, but you're going to get a decent amount of really solid play. They bring in KJ Britt, a vet, solid enough who can play depth here, and if he has to step in, you're not losing a whole ton. Chad Muma's been around for a while. You get rookie and Nnamdi Obaizar. I hope I said that right, but so you're looking at a solid deep room. And again, if like Ellis has to drop, KJ Britt comes in, you're not losing a ton there. And if the rookie hits the ground running and plays well, you're not losing a ton there. So solid, deep. I am dying today, excuse me. As for the secondary, there's not much to say about the linebacker room. It's just really solid and deep. Secondary, this is a super, super fun group. Christian Gonzalez, elite guy. I mean, this is a top 2, 3, 4 corner, wherever you want to put him. I'm not going to argue with you. Elite player, sticky, uber talented, 12th in PFF's coverage grade last year. You just want him to continue to be himself. As for the rest of it, we don't have to talk about. We don't have to talk about Christian Gonzalez much, because it's just elite play, and you're expecting elite play going forward, and there's no reason why you shouldn't have it. Number 2, Carlton Davis. This is a really good player. PFF had him as the 19th best corner last year. He's had a really nice career when he's on the field. Most of the time, he's not on the field like he was last year. 21 games he played. He's normally an injury guy, and most of his career has been an injury guy, so hopefully he stays healthy. But when he's on the field, you're looking at a really good 2. And very similar to Marcus Jones, who's a solid corner, 21st ranked corner on PFF last year. All these guys were ranked in the top 21. on PFF. And again, Marcus Jones, couple of good years in a row now. Um, he might not have as much of a ceiling because because of his size, but his floor is pretty good, as you can tell. And again, another really solid player who was just healthy last year. And this was the healthiest team in the league last year. And we'll see if that comes back around. We don't want it to come back around in this room, but this is probably the room it's most likely to come around in, which is a bit of an issue because, again, Carlton Davis, Marcus Jones are both guys who have mostly missed time throughout their careers, and not missing any time last year was a bit of a miracle. The depth here is a problem. So if any of those two dudes miss time, or God forbid both miss time at the same time, you're looking at a pretty problematic room all of a sudden. And again, it doesn't matter how good Christian Gonzalez is because he's excellent. But if the pass rush isn't really getting there and the corner room is just Christian Gonzalez and some buddies, Charles Woods, Kendall Vildor, Karan Puntry, the rookie, like if it's just those guys, you're probably have two weak link spots and not getting pressure, which is a disaster because you can get the ball out quick going again attacking these corners, and you're not getting pass rush. So even if they don't get the ball out quick, they have time. So this is a potential problem. Like there's a world where this falls off an absolute cliff if these two get injured. But while they're healthy, this is pretty comfortably one of the best secondaries in the league. So it's a very, very interesting dynamic we got going on here. But I would really like some depth. Anything, Trayvon Diggs or whoever. If you can just find a little bit of depth along the way, that'd be pretty gigantic. Safety, solid. Craig Woodson was really solid in his first year. Run defense stuff was really excellent. Hoping he can take a step up. Coverage was decent. But if he can move forward, take a step, you're looking at a pretty good player. Kevin Byard comes in. He's a vet and has been around a long time and has played a lot of snaps and has found a way to diminish the negatives that come with his declining athleticism. But his tape is starting to show some pretty significant holes, and I'm not particularly sure I'm in love with the idea that Byard is going to be starting safety here. But again, he's solid. There are issues with some of the, you take a bad angle here and there, and he just doesn't have the speed as much anymore. And there are some plays of players going right by that portion of the defense that he was a part of last year. So we'll see what that looks like, but I'm kind of worried about that. Del Pettis, Mike Brown, bit of depth, nothing fantastic. So we'll see what the safety room looks like, but you're getting a really solid safety at least and a vet back there, so hopefully it's good. And again, the secondary as a whole is really good when healthy. Need Carlton Davis to stay healthy. Need Marcus Jones to stay healthy. As a unit, I don't particularly like getting high on units like this because if you're not getting pass rush, it doesn't matter how good the secondary room is because it doesn't matter how good of a corner you are. You can't really cover consistently for 4 seconds every snap. You just can't. And I think Milton Williams can get some pass rush, and if Barmore steps up, perhaps. I'm just not sure there's going to be a ton of pass rush from the edge unit, period, at all along the way. So that is a worry. And again, if Jones were to go down, or if Carlton Davis were to go down, not only would you not be getting pass rush, you would have a weak link in the secondary, and that he'll just get picked on constantly, and it'll have to change the way you set your defense up a little bit, and it could be problematic. So I'm not going to get high on this defense. I think it could be an issue, and we'll see what it looks like. Again, this schedule is a little bit more difficult, but while it's healthy, I think we're looking at a good secondary. Just need the pass rush to kind of find ways to get to the quarterback. As for the schedule, again, much more difficult than it was last year. There are plenty of winnable games on this schedule, but it's a really difficult start. You go to Seattle on banner night to open the season, which is weird, by the way. I'm surprised they did that, but that's what's happening. You get Pittsburgh at home, and then you go to Jacksonville and to Buffalo. Now, 3 road games in a row against three road games in 4 against 2 fantastic offenses and an elite defense in there, and then Pittsburgh, who are always a little bit plucky. So it's a tough start. Then you have Las Vegas at home, Jets at home. That is winnable, both of them. At Chicago and at Miami. Miami are winnable. There's a 3 and 4 game stretch there that's really nice, and then a 3 and 4 game stretch here where you're just playing the NFC North. At Chicago, again at Miami, and then Green Bay at home, and then Detroit overseas, which is, again, all really difficult. Those are games that are going to be tough. You don't have to go. You get to play the Lions, outside of their dome, which is good. Then you have the bye week after, which I like. I like the bye weeks after the international breaks, and then a tough run again at Los Angeles, the Chargers, and then Buffalo at home, Minnesota at home, at the Chiefs. That's a tough 4, and then at the Jets, Broncos at home, Dolphins. So it's a lot tougher than last year. There's still very much winnable games on here. Again, Miami and the Jets you play twice. You get the Raiders at home, who you should be. You're going to be better than Pittsburgh, most likely. We'll see. But there are some, particularly this road schedule is very difficult. At Seattle, at Jacksonville, at Buffalo, at Chicago, overseas against Detroit for one of your home games, at the Chargers, at the Chiefs, and then at the Jets. So the road schedule is really difficult. And it is a step in the wrong direction. But again, I think there are winnable games here. You get 4 in division against the Jets and Dolphins. You get Vegas at home. You're probably, your floor there is, probably 4 wins. You're most likely going to end up with 5. So there is a nice floor there. And if you can kind of split the other stuff, you're a playoff team most likely. So it's a tougher schedule. To me, a really tough road schedule. And we'll see what that looks like. But we do have a couple of bets here for the Patriots that kind of go against each other, but not in the way we were speaking. I did play some Patriots under 10.5 wins at minus 112. That was a $10 bet. We played that a while ago. Hopefully we can go ahead, or not hopefully, in terms of the bet, again, that road schedule is just nasty, nasty, nasty. And we spoke about some potential, downfalls of the defense. I worry about the pass rush. I worry that if the pass rush is not good, then you're looking at a secondary that could be nullified, even though it is very good. Injury concerns for 2 players who have spent a lot of their career injured in that secondary. I just worry about the defense as a whole and a little bit about the offensive line. So we'll see there. So we like a little bit of under. And then we played this Patriots to go 6-0 in the AFC East at 20 plus 2,500, a $2.74 bet for us in our challenge there. I don't think we'll talk about the Bills at some stage. I kind of think this team's better than Buffalo, but 25-1, and you're going to be pretty significant favorites in all 4 of those games against the Jets and the Dolphins. And then you're getting a home game against Buffalo and then an early game against Buffalo. And that early game against Buffalo is a tough spot, but we're looking at 25-1 here. The Bills are like +4 or like 5-1 to do this. I think these teams are kind of close, so I'll take the 25-1 there that they kind of sweep Buffalo. Again, it's a very much a far out, probably not doable thing, but can't argue with the number. And those are the New England Patriots. Excuse me again for coughing my way through that for whatever reason. But yeah, I think this team will be good offensively. I think there are some spots to downfall, but we'll see what their season's like.